Welcome to the Norse God's Hell. So this video actually uploaded once already, and it uploaded when it wasn't supposed to, but I think that was meant to be because we have Ian here at the Wisconsin Ostara Gathering where he just put on a ritual to hell. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through what the video I already made, which talks about the history of hell, what we know historically, and then we're going to move into an interview Ian and I already did beforehand talking about honoring hell today. And then the last segment is going to be an interview with some footage of the ritual we performed this weekend. So thank you, and I'm sorry for the video messing up. I found out it's YouTube's fault now, so I apologize for that, but I think it was meant to be. So I hope you enjoy this video on the Norse god or goddess Hel. Hello and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. This is the video I promised you where I'm going to be sharing with you what we know about hell, at least from the source material, and then I have a conversation with Ian in our community who's also on the Folk podcast, who actually works with hell. So I want to give you that perspective of the historical of what we know, and the fact that the matter is we don't know a lot, which is why I wanted to give you more in this video. Normally, in a video like this, I would have left it at the Norse gods of the afterlife and shared all the information with you there, but hell has been one of the most requested deities to talk about within the Norse God series. So I really wanted to make this video for the people that want to know more about her. And again, I don't personally work with hell. I don't really have any hell experiences, so I wanted to make sure I got someone to share in this conversation with you. So I'm going to read you the source material here and what we know, and then I'll get Ian on the phone here, and we'll talk about hell and how to venerate her today. So one of the hardest things to do when researching hell is determining the difference between hell the location and hell the individual. So I'm going to be sharing information with you about hell, the location, as well as the individual. Now, the thing is, hell as the individual, we have very scarce mentionings of. Within the Poetic Edda, there is only vague mentionings of, in fact. So here in Voluspa and Skama, in stanza 41, it mentions, Loki ate a woman's heart. He found it half burned on a burning linden tree. Loki became pregnant from the dead evil woman, and from their child come all the troll women. That is it. That is basically the only reference, and it's not even a direct reference to who hell probably is just the actual birthing of hell. And it could actually not be about hell, but I interpreted this as hell because of the half-burned and the fact that she is half-living, half-dead. So I'm assuming this means hell, I think. Other than that, we are given a little bit more of a description in Baldur's Drama about hell, the physical location, as Odin rides down to discuss Baldur's nightmares with a witch that he raises from the dead. And so we're given a description of what hell looks like before Baldur arrives, and it's described in a fairly positive way. Whose arrival are these benches draped with straw floor? Why is the floor all covered in gold? The meat is brewed for Baldur's arrival. A shield is placed over the fresh brew. That's kind of it. But again, we're seeing a positive light for Baldur's arrival here, and the mentioning of gold on the floor is kind of backed up by Snorri in the sense that he describes a bridge going into hell as covered in gold as well. So again, not wholly a bad place, which is hell the place and hell the person are often described as in popular media. It doesn't seem like it is a wholly bad place, and she is not a bad deity in the sense of evil. She's not the Satan or anything like that, or the watcher of the underworld in a bad way. That's kind of it for the Poetic Edda. The rest is kind of left to the Prose Edda. So again, we're given very little description of everything. So within the Prose Edda, we're given our biggest description of hell, and this comes directly from Odin throwing her down into the underworld.
Hell, Odin threw into Niflheim and gave her authority over 9 worlds, such that she has to administer board and lodging to those sent to her, and that is those who die of sickness or old age. She has great mansions there, and her walls are exceptionally high and the gates great. Her hall is called Eludnir, her dish hunger, her knife famine, the servant ganglati, serving maid ganglot, her threshold where you enter, stumbling block, her bed sickness, her curtains gleaming bale. She is half black and half flesh-colored, thus she is easily recognized, and rather downcast and fierce-looking.
There's a decent amount to look into here. And again, we're given a both positive and negative look into what hell looks like. I mean, you're described as mansions, high walls, and then you also have sickness, famine, her knife famine, and sickness, and sick bed, and all these things. So we're definitely given that duality of death in the sense that it is a beautiful thing at times, much like I described in the Afterlife video. I do believe the best way to describe hell is the beauty of a graveyard. It's slightly haunting because there are dead literally buried right behind me here. But at the same time, it's beautiful. There's a beautiful fountain here. It's been designed beautifully. There's annoying geese over there. I guess some would consider them beautiful. But at the same time, I think hell would be much like a graveyard. There is beauty here. There could be mansions here. I mean, you see great monuments here built to people who lived. And so I think that hell in itself probably is much like a graveyard. Another interesting note on language, again, this is just all coming from Snorri's words, is that she was to administer board and lodging to those sent to her and those who die of sickness. So interesting that she could be sent somebody, not necessarily just people who die of old age. Interesting note. So this next section here is quite long. This comes from the actual story of Baldur's death and how Hermund the Bold was sent to basically negotiate for Baldur coming back. Hell plays a small role in the story, and we're given once again a more description of what Hell looked like.
But there is this to tell of Hermund that rode for 9 nights through valleys dark and deep, so that he saw nothing until he came to the river Gjoll, and rode onto Gjoll Bridge. It is covered with glowing gold. There is a maiden guarding the bridge called Mudgod. She asked him his name and lineage, and said that the other day there had ridden over the bridge 5 battalions of dead men. But the bridge resounds no less under just you, and you do not have the color of dead men. Why are you riding here on the road to Hell? He replied, I am to ride to Hell to seek Baldur, but have you seen anything of Baldur on the road to Hell? And she said that Baldur had ridden there over Gjoll Bridge, but downwards and northward lies the road to Hell. Then Hermund rode on until he came to Hell's gates. Then he dismounted from the horse and tightened its girth, mounted and spurred it on. The horse jumped so hard and over the gate that it came nowhere near. Then Hermund rode up to the hall and dismounted from his horse, went into the hall, saw sitting there in the seat of honor his brother Baldur. And Hermund stayed there the night, and in the morning Hermund begged from Hell that Baldur might ride home with him, and said what great weeping there was among the Aesir. But Hell said that it must be tested whether Baldur was so beloved as people said.
And then it basically runs into the story, the fact that, everything in Asgard and the 9 realms had to weep for Baldur's death, and all did besides a giant woman who was most likely Loki. Therefore, Baldur was not able to return. And I did add a note here that in Baldur's Kinnings later on in Skaldskaparmal, it is mentioned that he is Hell's companion. Again, I added this to show that he was in that seat of honor, that it was a positive way that he was there as well. But again, this description of Hell is interesting because it's given that grand look. It has high walls and all this. So again, not a wholly bad place, but again, still the place of the dead. And that is basically it. That is the majority of information about Hell as a place and as a person that we are given within the Prose and Poetic Edda. So not a lot to look into. Again, I have explored the burial practices of people in the past, and I couldn't really seem to find any artifacts that represent Hell or really show any form of Hell veneration or worship, even though we do know that ancestor veneration and worship was a big deal to the people of the past. So with that, I do want to move into this conversation with Ian and talk about his experiences and ask him questions about Hell worship today to better help the people that requested this video, because there were so many of you. So I want to be able to give you enough information that you can base some form of practice. But I just want to make sure that it's understood that as far as we know historically, there was no cult of Hell. There was no Hell veneration, but there was, of course, dead veneration. She was just the caretaker of the dead. So with that, let us go ahead and get Ian on this call and share that conversation with all of you.
Okay, so this did not work out exactly how I wanted. I wanted Ian and I both to be recording in the graveyard, but it's still the same day, but it was too cold and windy up in Minnesota, so we ended up just recording in here. But regardless, I have Ian here for this conversation, so I hope it's helpful to anyone who's looking to get into Hell veneration. Again, I'm not very versed in it. I mean, I literally have 0 experiences, so I really wanted to bring someone on here to actually, describe this more. So, Ian, go ahead and introduce anyone to you if they don't know who you are. I mean, you're from the Folk Podcast, all that stuff, but just give everyone a brief introduction.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Ian. I've been active practicing Norse Pagan for strongly the last 4-ish years, kind of been delving with it for the past, 10 total. I'm on the Folk Podcast. I've been in a couple of the gathering videos. I would say the most notable scene is the famous vegan shepherd's pie situation from the last fall gathering that just happened. So I've been in and out of a few of the videos and stuff like that, and then Desert Pagan on Instagram. But yeah, I've been working with Hell, I would say, since 2019. So it's been a solid, almost going on 4 years ish. So I've kind of become that go-to person within like the Discord community, as well as a couple others, as far as advice and how to get into things and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully this helps a lot of people.
So I actually kind of want to skip ahead. I know we had this later in the questions here, but how do you deal with that lack of source material as far as like, because, you kind of become that go-to person. And I remember people in the Discord come all the time, and it's always, a lot of times it's people asking for Hell information. So a lot of times we end up tagging you and stuff in that. I mean, because, most of my Norse Gods series involve like pages and pages of notes. And for her, I have single page, like this was all my notes for her, because there just isn't that much. And I was actually really struggling to talk about her. So how have you dealt with that lack of information?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely frustrating. I mean, obviously, the main stories that we have within the mythos is, Odin sending several other of the gods to go locate Loki's children. And that's essentially her origin story, so to speak. And that's even within that she has roughly, maybe a few paragraphs dedicated, to her. Yeah, yeah. Depending on which like book of the myths and stuff that you read, you get a paragraph, maybe two or three, at most. And then obviously we have the conversation regarding Baldur's death, on trying to revive him. And that's when she gives out the the quest of as long as you can get every creature to cry for Baldur's death. And that's basically it. That's essentially what we have. And then there's a few very obscure things here and there that it's not, you don't know if you can trust that information necessarily. Like,
right. Well, the thing I had here that I shared for everybody was in Voluspa and Skama, there is a slight reference that maybe be her, and like it doesn't say her name, but it says Loki ate a woman's heart. He found it half burned on a burning linden tree. Loki became pregnant, and that dead woman, and from their child come all the troll women. So that the half burned thing is the only thing that makes me think that it could be Hel, because Snorri describes her as half black, so maybe that means like half burnt.
Right, yeah, because you have a couple of different descriptions where it's either half black, half completely like skeletal and rotting. There's even some where some of the more common ones are half blue in skin tone, like a almost like a sickly kind of blue, where Loki being of giant descent and her essentially becoming of giant descent as well. Like that's a tie between that to some degree. So yeah, there's a couple different descriptions that come here and there. So yeah, it is a little frustrating trying to find solid information on her. So a lot of my stuff has come from personal practice and interactions, as well as some individuals who have interacted with her as well. So a lot of it is just kind of from my own personal experience as far as the advice that I've given, and a lot of it luckily has seemed to work for quite a few people.
Yeah, I mean, even if you wanted to try to write a book about Hel, if you wanted even 100-page book, even if you dissected each word of what we know about her, you still wouldn't have 100 pages, and that's kind of the frustrating part. So a lot of it is going to come from personal experiences.
Exactly, yeah, because that is something that I do want to work on, is a book specifically dedicated for her and venerating her and etc. And yeah, the vast majority of it is going to come from my own personal experience, and then I want to get individuals from the community to kind of give me some of their experiences that they're willing to share, to kind of help build a picture that we just really don't have, which is unfortunate.
Real quick, you're not getting any feedback from your audio into my mic, right?
No.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. So really the next question is, why would someone want to work with Hel necessarily? Like, why do you think people come to her, or who do you recommend, if they're going through certain situations, would need to work with her or call out to her?
Right. So a lot of individuals that have reached out to me, it's usually involving the death of a family member or a loved one, is usually the main focus of why somebody would reach out to her and venerate her, because most of us are, that is where we're going. We are going to Hel's realm. We are going to Helheim, Niflheim, that combo. And that is essentially where we're going. Us common folk are going to go there. It's very rare that you're going to end up being, a Valhalla guy. That's just, in today's age, that's just not really going to happen. The majority of us are going to her. And so that is the most common ground that a lot of people will come to me on, is, hey, I just had a death in the family, or a close friend, etc. How do I, make an offering to Hel to help guide them, to watch over them, things of that nature. So that is usually the common denominator there, that people will come to me about her and why somebody would venerate her. Or, and to some degree, there is some ancestral worship stuff that can be connected to her, because if that is where most likely those of us, or those who have come before us, have gone, or that's where they are, I know some individuals will help with, or work with her to help with venerating ancestors.
I know, like, the only time I've ever brought her into a ritual space was Ancestral, or the Alpha Bloat we did at the Pennsylvania gathering. Mm-hmm. I did give her offerings, basically to allow me to speak with the ancestors in the ritual. And I think that's like the extent of my knowledge as far as what to do with her. just because I've been lucky enough not to have too many close family members die. And even if they did, they're very Christian, so I just don't know how that relationship would be.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're gonna be like okay if I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna call to hell and then hook up with you, you know.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I think that was my only experience. But how do you recommend like people give an offering to her? Like, what would a basic hell ritual look like?
So the way that I kind of have this pretty structured now because I've had so many different people come to me regularly about this, and the way that for a first time experience, I mean, this kind of is a blanket situation that I've kind of explained for people with any of the deities. If you're trying to make your first offering, is that introduction. Make it a introduction. For example, if for hell specifically, I would give an offering. If you want to do a physical offering, some of the common things that I do is like dark red apples. Like I look for the ones that are almost like purple in nature. Dark chocolates, like almost like the cooking chocolate, so it's super bitter. Purple flowers, like for me personally, I have a purple orchid flower that as the flowers dry out and fall off, I will actually grab those and save them and put them on a very specific altar space that I have set up for hell, things like that. I mean, obviously, whatever, if it's for a particular family member or something, if you have like a memento, that would potentially be something that you could give at least temporarily for whatever you're doing. But yeah, always make it an introduction. Introduce yourself essentially and open that space and let her know, hey, I'm here to, I just had this passing of a family member. This is who they were to me. This is, how important they were to me. Even talk about them a little bit like that family member as if you are talking to her and introducing and describing this person that is now passing on. And, just ask to have her watch over them or guide their journey to wherever it is that they're going, make it easier for them or just, watch over them in general. That's a very rough introduction and basis, and then take it from there. Whatever feels right for you. You can get as extravagant as you want or as detail oriented as you want, or it can be very simple. That is kind of the nice thing with her is that from my experiences, I don't feel like she has necessarily required a lot. A lot of it is just giving your time to her and that attention, because in a lot of the stories that we have, she's described as a grotesque monster to some degree. And from my own personal experience, I feel like that has shifted people away or given some sort of negative connotation to her. So a lot of people are scared to work with her, and the gods being the gods, I feel like she would know this or have this idea that people fear her because of Christianity basing their bad place off of her name to some degree, or like playing off of it. So it's almost like a hurt feelings kind of thing. She's very misunderstood. So just that attention alone, I feel like is good enough, and just recognizing that she is here.
Well, and I don't know if it's just because everything goes through a Christian lens or if this is just how a lot of the world has worked, is there's this idea of the good and the bad place when you die.
Yeah.
And so the majority, even like, especially the Egyptian afterlife, even the good one isn't that good, and then there's this like,
yeah.
I forget how many there are, but then like the rest are pretty bad, so I think there's this misconception that whoever oversees the afterlife is just inherently a bad or evil being, or maybe at the very least selfish.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that has had an effect on how people approach worshiping her, or it's put that sense of fear. And she's not, a deity to be feared. Respect, obviously, like that goes across the board for all the gods. Like a sense of respect should be given, obviously, but she's not she's not evil. Like you said, we don't necessarily have a good versus evil connotation. There's that order and chaos aspect to a lot of things, and we've talked about that on the podcast many times. So I feel like people are just so caught up in that visual representation of her. And yeah, like what you said, most overseers of the afterlife are spooky, they're scary. Death is generally a scary thing to think about to some degree. And I think that does mess with a lot of people's mindsets when going into it or wanting to make that first connection.
So with that, do you think she's like a difficult deity to reach? As far as the scale of deities. I feel like the lower you go or something like into the realms, like Norns are like almost impossible, and then you have like Freya, who's pretty easy. Like, where does she kind of
Yeah.
exist? Do you find that you have good, when you give an offering, you feel you have a good response from it, or is it a little bit more vague?
Uh, it kind of depends. I would say she's kind of middle ground because she is kind of a relatively specific reason why you would be reaching out to her. Like it's not every day that people are dying necessarily close to you. I feel like it may be, say, during the prime of Norse paganism specifically, winter, a lot of people would be dying right now. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people that would just die irregularly. So I feel like in that day and age, it would be, a lot easier for somebody to connect, or it would be a much regular, occurrence. So for us in, today's age, people live a lot longer. It's not necessarily as common for family members to pass away, almost every year or on every season to some degree. I feel like I would put her at middle ground, and oh, we have special guest Miri. Uh, I would put her to like mid tier because she's just a specific reason for why you'd be reaching out to her.
If you think about it, Miri's kind of a hellcat because she's half black and half white. Look at that.
Right?
Ah,
I have to come
what's
visit
happening?
to give her
I
all
was
the
just trying to make sure her
stretches.
butt didn't get in the camera. She loves to do
Right.
that. I don't want to have to like put a big
The behind
blur.
the behind the scenes of the podcast that nobody knows about is Mary shows her butt every time.
Oh yeah, all the time. So like really the last thing here, I just want to see if you kind of agree with the statement because it's something I came up with while I was filming today, and I've really connected with it. Is as far as like hell the person and hell the place. I feel like the best way to describe her is like a graveyard. Graveyards are beautiful, but just in a different kind of way. Because that's where I was filming today, and you got the moss, you got the beautiful monuments, and it even describes her like the realm of hell having museum like mansions. And so we see all these mausoleums and stuff like that, and it really made me think. It's like, okay, this is beautiful. It's just not the normal kind of beautiful. So I think that's how I'm going to kind of perceive her from now on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because the graveyard that I wanted to try to film at for this is called Oak Grove Cemetery, and I could only go so far because they had it blocked off, so I couldn't take my car fully through because it's winter here, so there's snow covering everything. But just the little bit that I could see from where I was walking into, it was massive oak trees. There was it was just a beautifully kept area, and so you don't necessarily think of the bad aspect of death. Like it's a very comfortable, almost like you said, it's beautiful in a different way. I'm sure come springtime, summertime, when there's no snow here, I guarantee you that place is absolutely gorgeous to look at. Based off of like my Google Maps and stuff when I was driving there, I believe a river kind of goes by it near it, or at least a pond of some kind. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. There is an aspect of beauty to her, just in a different way.
So those actually all the questions I had. So I will say, if you want, keep an eye on the comment section of this video. And if anyone has any questions, I want to encourage them to ask them. But I think you gave a nice covering. I mean, again, it's just so hard because, as someone that's just kind of a researcher in this regard, I can only say so much. But even you, with personal experiences, you can only say so much. And, and personal experiences start drifting away. And it just, you don't want to, everyone's just going to have a different experience. And it's really hard to talk about.
Yeah, it really is. So yeah, anybody who does happen to watch this, like I said, I put my Instagram in at the beginning. Go ahead and feel free to message me. I've had regular discussions with people who have messaged me on Instagram, and obviously if you're in the Discord community and stuff like that, feel free to hit me up on this, because also I want to try to get as many different people's experiences, if you do have some, for this book that I'm trying to write at some point here, because that's a lot of what I'm going to be basing it off of and trying to build that bigger picture. So that way we have at least something to go off of for personal practices.
Queen of the dead, the guardian and caretaker of our ancestors, our beloved dead, and those who have come before us. Hell, I ask that you join us this night, as well is allow the ancestors, beloved dead of those who are here with us. These markings, these handprints upon my body are those bloodlines, those loved ones. Allow them to latch on to those and join us in this celebration of them and of you, and allow them to pass through your mighty gate with me.
So I just wanted to ask Ian really here, how, describe the ritual to us, at least kind of lead us through it.
Right, so originally it wasn't something that I was planning on putting on. It was actually Blade that invited me to help him with it, who is sitting over here.
Ian, I guess Blade, you want to come down here? Yeah, come down here.
Do I have to sit down?
You don't have to sit down, you can just right here.
I'll kneel down. I'm bodacious though.
What was your, idea kind of going into it as Ian's other half here or really you're kind of the spokesman for us in a way, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the mindset that I had with it is this is kind of a very different Ostara weekend than most we've had. I wanted to bring honor to the death that has come in the winter, and then also honor the growth that's going to come from this new year. And then, I mean, we're past the new year, but you know what I mean. And just, that transitional period, we had the bones on one side of the fire and then the flowers on the other as a representation of both death and life. And I feel like we can't honor life if we don't honor the dead that came before it.
Yeah. So the drumming was a really powerful aspect of the ritual last night, especially here in this land, because when you hit that drum, it just echoed throughout everything here. Did you have any idea behind the drumming?
No, not really.
Or was it really just to get people into it?
Well, me and him talked beforehand about how we wanted the drumming whenever he would go through the gate. So we simulated what we'd call a knocking. And it's kind of like our, hey, we're doing this. And it was just basically it also, he was blind. It was good, for me to let him know
Yeah,
when
it
to
was
walk
good signal
through.
over here.
But I know during the ritual, from my studies at least, with what I've done with drumming, I think that light, moderate tone of epicentral beats where it just plays on a I can't think of the word. Anyways,
Monotone.
It's just, that has a way of kind of it's also in tune with your heartbeat in a way, and the way the blood flows to your brain. I just think it just makes it pulls you in the moment more.
All right, Blade, be gone.
Okay. Hang on, peasant.
Yeah, so because then we'll just roll into your segment there. Oh my! I just saw Blade's whole ass. No, it definitely seemed the two key components of this was definitely the gateway and then the handprints themselves on you. Which, when it comes to evolving your practice, because you could have definitely gone out there and just been hell, let's give an offering to her. Thank you. It could have been that simple. But, choosing to add two components, to add depth to it and hopefully add effect to it, which, I think many people definitely felt that, especially, being able to cross that veil, so to speak, and put their hand on you and have that representation, I think is a really powerful thing.
Yeah, and that was one thing I wanted to bring into it, was make it a lot more personal for each individual there. Because, there is that process of, thinking about which, ancestor or loved one, et cetera, that they wanted to pick. So there was some thought process behind it for the individual. So it wasn't just an honoring hell as a general, umbrella term or a ritual. I wanted it to be a lot more personal for each individual there. And that's definitely where the handprint idea came from. And, kind of, I'm sure there'll be some people oh, you acted as a beacon, that's risky, but I'm always that type of person to go to the next level.
Well, and it's not like you just, did that on a whim, you
Exactly.
had pre-ritual, you had a couple hours of, getting yourself ready.
Exactly. I did my things I needed to do beforehand, but I just wanted to take it to that next level and make it that much more powerful, that much more personal for each individual. And then initially at the beginning of planning it, I didn't necessarily want, the general physical offerings that most people do, that we have at these gatherings and the rituals. At first, I didn't want that to be part of the main ritual. I wanted the handprint and that thought and that remembrance. That was the whole point of it, not necessarily the physical aspect of it. But afterwards, if anybody did have any offerings that they wanted to give, by all means, I let them have that moment. But the main process was just that remembrance as the offering.
Nice. So really, I think the last thing to close this out here, kind of like what Caleb and I did in the California Yule video, taking this ritual, do you want to do it again at some point and change some things? And if you do, like, what are some things that you kind of want to tweak?
Yeah, I definitely do think I would do this again. As far as like things that I would tweak would probably just be the paint first off that I use.
Yeah.
I wanted something because it was pretty thick, like just acrylic paint, which
Not like $1 bottle Walmart paint.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I want something that will make the handprints a little bit more distinguished, and not quite so smudgy.
I wonder if you did something with, like, you know, you take like ash from here.
Yeah, that was
and
a
mix
thought
together.
that I had, like some ash and water. And then, I mean, I'm sure there'll be some things, like, as I think about it and like reflect on it, I'm sure there'll definitely be some other aspects that I would tweak and modify, and maybe not do it when it's so cold, because I didn't have a shirt and that was a little rough.
How cold were you the whole time?
While doing it, like while prepping, I was standing at the fire because I was like, I know I'm gonna be cold, so I want to take in as much heat as I can from the fire. And then while actually doing it, I didn't feel any cold really at all. And it wasn't until I had closed it that, yeah, it was, I don't know if, you know, combination of being cold and just finishing with a ritual like that, you know, my body was definitely shaking and shivering. And it took me a minute afterwards. I was like, I don't know if it's the weather or the ritual, but I am shaking right now. But yeah, it was pretty cold, but it was worth it. But maybe do it a little bit warmer next time.
Thank you for joining us for this hell video. Sorry it kind of uploaded and then disappeared and everything, but I think it was meant to be because I think it was perfect, because now we can actually have the hell ritual in there as well. So if you've joined us for it, I know it's a long video at this point, but I really think at this point it really encapsulates, I mean, you see the actual facts of who hell was, at least what we know from the sources. We had a conversation about just honoring and venerating her today, and then a ritual. I mean, that's a pretty...
That's a good, solid all-around.
And, you know, and I would say, as someone who doesn't work with hell at all, and I think, you know, from the initial comments, it seems like, you know, hell is not someone everyone works with, you know, but honestly, with me, I think it is an ancestral thing. It really is a duality between ancestry and hell. And so for me, you know, I've had a really heavy ancestor weekend. I've been giving offerings and really trying to connect with them more. And so for me, that's what came through as far as it. And I think that's what makes it good to participate in.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to, like, go home and give offerings to hell all the time. You can still participate and see that ancestor thing.
Exactly, yeah. 100%.
But with that, thank you so much for joining us for this hell video. And I think we're almost done with the Norse God series. We got Freyr coming up, so make sure you're checking out for there. And otherwise, thank you so much. And you can say thank you too.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
I was, you know.
I have to wait for until the whole skull thing. But...
Oh yeah, until the hall.
Skull.
Skull.